Welcome, Illumineers! It is time to take a rest from your quest and check on in to the Lore Keeper's Inn. I'm your host, Katie. And as of August 18th, 2024, which is only 2 days ago as of today's recording, it's officially been a year since Lorcana has been out and in the hands of Illumineers, and we've been questing. So that means it's been a year of questing, a year of collecting, and my favorite part, it's been a year of watching the community grow. I am honored to say that with me today are some of the very people who paved the way for me to not only learn about this game, but also inspired me to jump into the community as a content creator myself. The very first episode of this show, of this trailblazing show, premiered on September 27th, 2022, which is way before the game was even available to consumers. I'm, of course, talking about the show that firmly sits on the Mount Rushmore of Lorcana content. It is the Citizens of Lorcana. And with me today is the founder of the show, Jared, his co-host, James, and friend of the show and all-around Lorcana Enthusiast, Adara. So welcome.
One minor correction. She is an official co-host, but her schedule's crazy.
Good. Okay.
So she's one of us. Like we're not gonna let anybody else take her from us. Okay?
Yeah. No. When she deigns us worthy. Okay. Yes. When she deigns us worthy of her presence, she comes onto the show.
I like that. It's good that Adara leaves the people wanting more. She's mysterious. She comes and then, she gives the people what they want and then, comes back when she's ready. Like Puxatawny Phil.
No, I was just going to say, I think what Jared and James are trying to communicate here is that I am claimed and I am more than willing to come on to things, but that they have claimed me.
That's smart.
Very early. Very, very early.
It's good to do that.
Yes. We're like, she came on as a guest and we're like, hey, guess what? You're now a co-host. And she agreed, which was good. We didn't kidnap her.
That is frowned upon in the community guidelines. I have read that you should not kidnap anybody for the game of Lorcana. But I will say that I'm excited for this because you guys have such a foundation of the community. I kind of jumped in with my show just this year. And so then last night, I was like, okay, I'll put the date of the first podcast episode publishing. And I'm like, okay. And I wrote it down. I was like, oh, September 2023. So a month after the game came out. And I'm like, scroll. 2022. So I couldn't think of a better bunch of guests to talk about the past year. But before we talk about, the year and recap, I wanted to talk a bit about each of you. Starting with Jared, I wanted to kind of hear what kind of got you ready to make content about a game that didn't exist yet.
So it was just right place, right time. I've always been interested in creating content, and I've tried. I'm a chiropractor. I tried creating a podcast about sports chiropractic. It just wasn't my jam. And when Lorcana was announced right before D23 of 2022, immediately I fell in love and I knew that this is what I had to do. As you know, Katie, probably, that's very scary to start something new. But I was in the Discord with James and Adara, and it was the Wild West back then. There are all sorts of Discords, the Reddit, people were everywhere, but you formed connections with people at that time. And everybody encouraged me at that time. They're like, yeah, you should do a podcast. I reached out to Jonty, who was the first content creator that I had seen, and he kind of gave me some encouragement. And so I put out my first podcast because I knew that Lorcana was going to be a big part of my life going forward. And I wanted to be a part of the community and a part of that conversation. And I didn't think that conversation would evolve into this. I thought, maybe I'll have one or two people that listen to my podcast, but as long as if it's fun and I enjoy doing it, I'm going to keep doing it. And I've just been truly grateful to pick up James and Adara and you, Katie, and all these amazing friends on the way. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it's very exciting because I remember, when I was thinking about making content, and, looking for things about Lorcana. You've been there since I've started Googling, so it's very exciting. It's full circle moment for me because it's just you guys been there. But then also, crazy, looking at I was looking at some of the titles. It's what is Lorcana? And but asking the question, not in a rhetorical way. No, what is it? Because it hasn't come out yet. So it's just very cool to see that you grew at the same fast before the game, with the game. Now, you mentioned you picked up some friends along the way. So my next one is to Adara. We kind of discussed before there that you are a mythical figure to me in the sense that you're a person that is referred to and has even a name that I saw a few places called the Clerk, and I was like, my goodness. So you are definitely like if there was a townspeople of Lorcana, you were definitely a citizen, a townsperson. So I'm excited to hear your origin story and how you got into Lorcana and into this ragtag group of podcasters.
Yeah, my introduction to Lorcana was after D23. I am really big into Disney Dreamlight Valley, as some people who see me in the Discord would know from my Discord profile picture. And I was actually connected with Lorcana through that. And then when I was trying to find out more, I was led to the Lorcana HQ Discord, where I felt like that seemed to be a group of people that were connected and at least had like similar thoughts and were like all trying to discuss what is Lorcana, because it was still way, way, way before we knew rules or anything like that. And so I just kind of lurked for a couple of days, and then I realized that, like, nobody really had, like, a centralized location, like, as stuff was coming out or even, like, just questions that were being asked. And I'm just like, I thankfully inherited from my mom her ability to just kind of help organize things. And
Mm.
so I just gradually started grabbing links of like, "Oh, yeah, like, here's this article that this person said that we can only use 2 ink colors," or, "Oh, you have this question. Here's where this message was that answered that." And so kind of through that and just through some processes of us trying to stay entertained while we were waiting for cards to be in our hand, I just kind of got elected the unofficial clerk, and just the name kind of stuck with me through the HQ, and I'll add it every once in a while to the other Discord servers I'm in as well.
I love that. I love that you're like, guess what? I know the stuff. Like you were the lore keeper before I kept lore. So that's, I guess, yeah, you're the
Exactly.
OG then. So that's, so it is interesting though. Cause yeah, I remember it's still even today. I mean, it's kind of, sometimes I remember like even in discourse, people will be like, where did it say this one thing? So now I know I'm coming for you when I try to remember where I saw something.
I will definitely
Um,
do my best to help you find where it is.
Perfect. You're not paid for this job, so it's nice that you do it. Um, so now I know that James, you have your own history of podcasting, um, particularly with the San Diego Comic Con, the unofficial podcast for that, correct?
Yes, I do. I do. The San Diego Comic Con
So
unofficial.
you're not a newcomer to the fandom, the fandoms of fandoms. So how did you get into this group? How are you assembled in this Lorcana Avengers?
So I was going to D23 back in 2022. And as I know to do from Comic Con, you look for information before the show so that you have an idea of what you want to do at the show. And I happened to see the day that the Lorcana press release was out from Ravensburger. And I'm like, that looks interesting. I think that's something that I'm going to want. And as I investigated more over the weeks leading up to the convention, yeah, I just became more and more interested. And so I went through the whole process of getting it at D23 and getting the cards, and then shortly after joined the Lorcana HQ Discord, which I think that's a pretty common theme for a lot of people back then. Is, oh, look, it's the Lorcana HQ Discord. That's where everybody is. Hung out there, talked with people about stuff, got to know people like Jared and Adara, and listened to Jared's podcast when he started, because he started it with just him. And he did a couple of episodes, and I don't remember which one it was, but in one of them, he just like mused to himself. It's like, maybe I should get a co-host. And at that point, I'm like, well, I know I've been doing this Comic-Con podcast for around 10 years at this point. And so I assume I knew how to do podcasting a little bit, at least. And I'm like, well, I do like to talk about Lorcana, and I want to talk more about Lorcana. So maybe I should actually see if he still is looking for a co-host. It took me a few conversations with my wife, and then I think it was about a month to finally send him a message. And that was near the end of the year. So it was like late December. And he's like, yeah, let's hop onto Discord and have a chat. And we chatted for, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 minutes, something like that, about stuff. And we're like, let's give it a go. And we recorded at the end of the year. It got put out at the beginning of 2023, and we've been going ever since.
And
That's
let me
about it.
just say, like, I'm very grateful for James. He brought a steady hand to the podcast because I was brand new to all this. To have somebody with his experience and expertise to rely on was a huge, like, honestly, the podcast probably still wouldn't be going without James here and without Beth supporting him and us in this endeavor. So I'm like, that was a turning point for the podcast for sure.
That's very cool
Oh,
to hear. Cause yeah, it's cool to find somebody that you drive with creatively. That's always like a very unique thing in life where you're like, are we talking? And like we get along and we can vibe and make a show. Like it's like the best of all
Well,
worlds.
James is like
Um,
the yin to my yang because I'm not a very loquacious person, but James can talk all the time. James could go on, like, our podcast could go on probably for 2, 3, 4 hours. James, had his way. Whereas I have
mhm.
this internal clock where once we're approaching that hour mark, I'm like, we got to wrap it up now. And so all of our podcasts are usually between an hour and 15 minutes. And you can hear it sometimes, especially when we have cards to go over. I'm like, James, we do not have time to go over all these cards. Oh, just one, just
Fun
one.
times
And
over.
without fail, one
now,
turns into 10.
of course. And here's a funny thing also. So I talk a ton, right? Or at least I could. But it's really funny because in person I'm like the non-social person, but Jared's like totally social and like we'll chat with he will. He talks to
What?
everybody. He
Are you
knows
kidding
everybody.
me?
You do.
I did. Yeah, at the
You may
convention,
think
I saw it in action. You're
Yeah. You may think I talk to a lot of people,
yeah,
Jared, but it's only people I know. So I don't go
Okay.
talking to just
Okay.
random people or,
Okay. I know maybe this proves your point, but I was talking to the guy next to us in line, okay? Because you were busy talking to everybody else. And I was telling this guy's like, this guy, he knows everybody. And without fail, it's like, hey, James, what's up? Oh, we know each other from Comic Con. Hey, James, what you doing at this D23? Like, it was one person after another. And meanwhile, I'm just talking to this guy
yeah.
with a little Dell on his shoulder, and I'm like, nice to see you, man.
Well, there's James is networking, he's in the biz of conventions. So, I think that's the funny part too is I'll see people in person and like I ran into James at the Learn to Play event and I know I'd seen him, but like you see someone that you look again, you're like, that's an internet person. And so you have to like look at everyone twice because you're like, that's a person. And you're like, oh no, that's a person I've talked to a lot. And it's not a stranger. So conventions are very fun in that way where you're making new friends and friends you already had and you didn't realize you had because you're not good at putting names to faces. Now, I think the funniest part of this week for me has been catching up on Twitter and, YouTube videos of people talking about like the Great War of the first chapter in Rise of the Floodborn. Now, I was I don't know how I wasn't doing Reddit or anything for those days. So I was very in my own zone, just local. Like I had a group of people who'd be like, all right, I'm at this Target, I'm at this Target. I would on my lunch, I had like a loop of 4 Targets and 2 Walmarts I would do. So I was wondering with you guys, do you guys have any battle stories? I know Adara, you were a part of the true battle of Gen Con 2023, correct?
Jared and I both were.
Jared too.
Jared had it worse
Both.
than I
Okay,
did.
wow. You're both veterans of the Gen Con battle. Now, did you actually get product that day?
I did get product. I don't remember. Jared, did you manage to get a box that day?
Listen, yes, I did. But you were at D23, Katie. Like Gen Con was that times 10. Like I can't even explain to you just how bad it was. But yes, in the end I was able to get 2 boxes. I got a trove, like everything except for no, I even got a playmat. I even got a playmat. Um
Wow.
and then luckily, from Lorcana HQ Discord, Medina, who was the one who ran that, he had like a special link for those of us who are moderators to pre-order some box one or some set one stuff. So I count myself very fortunate that I wasn't like in those Discord groups like Target on Stephanie Street, which is a street here in Las Vegas, has Lorcana. Everybody go right now. So I just was able to avoid all that because I was able to get most of what I needed from Gen Con and from the Lorcana HQ, Medina Discord.
I think I learned I like the hunt. That's the problem, is I think I learned that there's something inside my little lizard brain that wants to be a hunter-gatherer. So, like, in theory, it got to the point where I didn't need more cards, but I'm like, I'm just gonna go look because it just felt so good to tell everyone locally, like, I have found the product. Like at some point, someone's like, "Can you hide me a trove?" I was like, "The trove is behind the hair dryer," and it scratched an itch in my brain I didn't know I had. So I would say that like, oh, I hated doing it, but I don't know. Sometimes I miss the hunt, the thrill of it all.
Yeah, the thrill would have been a lot better if we were able to find products slightly more often.
Yeah, but then now when I see anything in store, I'm like, well, I have to buy it, and that's simply not true. I do not need to.
You
It's pretty
don't.
frequent that you'll see something in this. But my goodness, I'm like, well, while I'm here, it'd be a waste not
I
to.
remember when
A foolish
Set
thing.
2 came out, and it had been out for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I was working right by that, Target on Stephanie Street, and I just happened to go in there, and there were booster packs. It was the first time I'd seen Lorcana actually in a big box store, and I remember posting it on my Twitter. I was like, "Nature is beginning to heal."
Yeah.
Because it was the first time I had seen it. So, and Ravensburger had talked about all along how first chapter was going to be a little tough, but then product was going to continue getting bigger and bigger. And, we already saw that with Rise of the Floodborn. So kudos to Ravensburger.
Yeah, they scaled it up quite fast, which I thought was very, very good because I have a very big I've never used my soapbox for this, but I have a very big soapbox against resellers, like people who buy things exclusively just to sell it later that day for more. So I was like trying to be like the Robin Hood, not to sell it for less, but like to be like, I'm gonna make sure. But then people are like, well, she's a scalper. Look how much she's getting. I'm like, no, I'm better than that. And then it's like, so it was like, it's hard. It's a hard ethical thing. It doesn't bring out the best in people. So I like how no one has to do that. We can just, shop Disney. They release their cards and everyone's like, oh, I guess I'll get to it. No one's waiting in queues. It's very nice.
Yeah.
It's a more gentle world.
I had a very hard time with the first chapter. I did not go to Gen Con, so I did not get just a few booster boxes just because. I think before
Just
the
while you're
reprint,
there.
yeah, before the reprint came out, I think I got a total of a booster box, like in a box. I got packs, a lot of packs, because I went to like 4 different stores a week to play weekly events, just to get
Yes.
packs. But the one booster box I got, the only reason I got it was because someone in Discord messaged me. They're like, I understand that you have not been able to find any product. He's like, my local store still has boxes at retail, and if you want one, I will buy one and send it to you for cost. From across the country, someone I didn't even know. And so that was the only booster box I
Yeah.
ever got to open before the reprint came out, which was awesome that someone would actually do that.
That's been a common theme is like I learned that like your community, whether that's local or globally, is filled with a lot of good eggs. I mean, obviously everybody has a horror story of somebody being like, oh, they bought everything and tried to sell it. But like the amount of good people way outweigh the bad people or questionable business ethics. Because yeah, I had people, I mean, gosh, we'd be like, I mean, saying like, I'm here right now. I'll stay here until you can get here. So that way, and just because, I mean, everybody wanted, because you can't play the game if nobody else has cards. That's the other thing too. Is like, it's something where you really need other people to have cards. Otherwise, it's just you looking at your cards. If you're really good at buying them, it really didn't do you a lot of good unless you could help a friend also have cards. So, as people who've been engaging with the community from the start, you've got to see, going from unofficial discords to official discords to YouTube to Twitter. So, what has been some of your favorite things or highlights for you as you watch this community go? And I'll start with you, Adara. Has there been anything that's like, this is very exciting, knowing that you went from having to be an unpaid clerk to now you can relax and watch the community kind of do this clerkship for you?
I think probably the biggest highlight for me is just the fact that Lorcana is always picking up new people. So Lorcana is my first TCG, and I just came into that with no understanding of how a TCG builds a community and all of that. And so it just blows my mind to see how every day, both like in like discords, there's always new people joining, but even like locally, like we're still seeing people show up to leagues and being like, hey, I've not played before, I'm interested, could you show me? And like just always seeing those new faces has definitely been a highlight.
Yes, I will agree that it is so exciting, and I think it's very funny because Lorcana has a very fanatical fan base of teaching people. Like, someone will show up at league, they're like, "Oh, I'm just here to trade." I was like, "Do you want to learn? You'll sit down," and it's like, "Oh, it's an aggressive friendliness." What about you, Jared or James? Do you have any highlights as far as watching the community blossom?
Gosh, so many. I mean, I don't even know where to start because, I mean, we pretty much have been there since the beginning. And I mean, I go back to the early days, right after D23, when all we had was Discord. And there's probably like 4 or 5, I guess we got into the thousands, but for months, for a couple months, we just speculated because we didn't know what was going on. And then Knife from Knives Nerd Corner went on Twitter and asked, could we get an early Christmas gift? And the community manager at the time, her name was Cassidy, she reached out and was like, "Yeah, we'll let you know something." And that's where we got to learn about the two inks. And I still remember Knife doing this premiere video where he was going to reveal this information that was new to the game, and everybody from the Lorcana HQ Discord was in there, and we were all watching this premiere where we finally learned that you can only have two inks in your deck. And I think did we also learn steel was an ink and not like a neutral color. But regardless,
Mm.
just and it's been that way ever since that time. Like the community supports itself, and once the game came out, yeah, it kind of fractured into the competitive players have their content creators, the social players have their content creators. Um, there's people like Cameron, the Lorcana curator, who really enjoys going to the parks and connects with the Disney adults that way. And to see the community, like each community continue to grow, but still be connected by this thing called Lorcana, it's been amazing to watch it grow from nothing to what it is today. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like a year from now. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's there's too many things. There's too many things.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, I mean, when you look at other communities, because I saw someone tweeted like, "Well, why is like the content creation library smaller compared to like something like Magic?" And I'm like, "It's a baby. It's just a little baby game." Some of these other games have been around for 3 decades, so it's hard to compare. So I think yeah, it's definitely very cool to see how fast and how eager people are to make content and to talk about it and look at it in different ways too. Like, I mean, I think there's someone on Twitter who will make like Lorcan inspired cocktails, and it's just everybody has their own creative. Into the
Yeah,
drink lens, I
yeah.
think, is the account, and yeah, everybody has their own little spin on it, which I just think is so fun. I refuse to pick a lane. I'm like, I'm gonna do it all. I won't pick a lane ever, so who knows? But and Leslie, James, what about you? Have you had any highlights watching this little baby game grow?
So I think they basically said most of it. I just want to point out one little thing at that packing district event where we were helping people learn to play. An older couple came up and they were like, "Hey, so we've been collecting the game for a year, and we feel like it's finally time to start learning how to play it." And he pulled out his phone and he showed me a picture on his phone, and it was just like a picture of like 30 graded enchanted cards. And I'm like, okay, that's
And he's like, you
impressive.
know what? Today's the
Now,
day.
now sit down, and I'm going to learn you some game. And they played the game, and they thought it was fun. And I just think it was cool that even people that are collectors are finding new ways to engage in the game and learning how to play it, and not just being collectors. Which I think even Adara was initially just going to collect the game, and like from the beginning, like as soon as like I think you said, as soon as you saw the rules, you're like, okay, I'm in. I can play this game.
That has been very fun because, I mean, I think anybody who's ever looked at Magic the Gathering or some of these longer games, or heck, even some like board games, you like look at the rules, you're like, absolutely not. And that's just a me problem. Where sometimes, I mean, some things just it doesn't look fun to learn. And Lorcana, they did a really great job of growing the game at the same time as the fan base. I think the Gateway product, like this, it feels like I'm plugging it, but I mean, I wasn't going to play the Gateway app, obviously, but I mean, I know how to play, so there's no reason. But getting a chance to play with the Gateway, I'm like, this is such a good tool. Like, it's so good that they're still thinking about that fact that it's been a year, and they're like, hey, I know it's been a year, and someone's gonna come in and be like, well, it's been a year, so it's too late. It's like, no, there's
Mhm.
more room on the Lorcana van or
Yeah.
bus. I don't know, extended limo. So I think another highlight for me was getting to do in-person things. Now, I was very active local in the sense that I would go to like, local sealed. You mentioned, James, that like for a while that was the only way you could get packs is by going to just any sealed or draft or anything where people are like, well, at packs. I'm like, okay. So I think that was a fun side effect of the early shortages was learning how to play limited. But I will say that getting to go outside the community and being like, wait a minute, this is bigger than just my state. It gives me a reason to travel, which anytime I have a reason to travel, I'm excited. So now I know, Jared, D23, was that your first like well, I guess you went to Gen Con. So have you done any of the challenges or
I've
anything
not been
outside of
to
D23
challenge.
and
I
Gen
will be
Con?
next month when it comes to Vegas. The only other convention I went to was
Very
Gamma.
exciting.
Gamma. I went with James, and Liam was there too, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and being in person is so fun because I mean it's fun once you're an active member of like the online community because you get to like be like, that's that person that I talk to a lot. And then you get to have that awkward, like, I'm not good at talking to people in person. So we're just gonna have some
Well,
weird chats, but
and
mostly it's not.
selfishly,
It's a me
one of the
problem.
reasons why I loved Gamma is because that was at a time where Lorcana wasn't in the mainstream consciousness. So there were not a lot of people there bugging Steve and Ryan. Like, we got to hang out with them pretty much the whole
Yes,
weekend.
yeah.
I'm sure they got tired of us hanging around their booth, but I mean, the amount of one-on-one time we got with Steve and Ryan and everybody who was there, the whole team is unprecedented, and we would never have a moment like that again, but that really cemented our friendship with them.
Yeah, and that's a very special thing that we'll put a bookmark there for the next question. Now, Adara, I know you have been to some challenges, or at least one, because I saw you had a challenge shirt. So you've definitely been on the road. What events have you done?
Yeah, I almost actually wore it tonight, but I decided to go the flamingo shirt route instead. So
So
I have been to the Chicago challenge. And it is safe to say that I am definitely addicted to going to these in-person events because I have plans. I'm for sure going to be at the Vegas challenge. And I would like to possibly judge at the Seattle challenge. And I went to Gen Con last year and this year. So I just love going to these events mainly because it's like this opportunity to like see people from all over so like North America for me. I mean, like I ran it like I think half of my opponents in Chicago were from Canada. And so it's just like it's so cool to see like this game that I've watched grow from this little tiny thing has like grown to be something so much bigger than just me and the people that I know. And so I think that just lends itself to like this cool feeling of like I am part of this thing that's part of something bigger, and that just feels good to participate in.
yeah, I feel like it feels like when you're a little kid. I don't know if any of you ever went to like summer camp, but like when you get to go to camp, and you get to see all your like, hey, how's it going? And so, which is funny because then we go back on Discord and talk like back up to normal. So it's not like anybody's ever apart, but it's cool being in person. It's a special kind of energy. And,
Yeah,
I think the Lorcana events are very cool because, you go to like anime or comic book conventions and you get, fandom, but this is like fandom with an activity, which is very cool that like you have people engaging in the joy of being a fan. Plus that added aspect of like, okay, but one person's going to win at this one aspect and there's all these side events. So I think they're very cool. Now I know, James, you've done some set championships and you placed, correct? You were in the top 4 for a stitch. You secured a stitch, correct?
Yes, I secured a stitch. I went to Atlanta.
So tell me more about your experience in Atlanta.
Uh, so Atlanta was fun. It was big. It was interesting, and I had a good time. Even though I didn't get to day 2, that as they say, the fun should be in the playing, not in the placing. I think I did rather well for being my first ever major event I'd ever been to. Uh, I did do 7 set championships for Stitch, and I got a Stitch out of that, 1 for 7. Unlike our buddy Eric from the Gamer, who did, I think he ended up only doing 6, and he got 4. So he had a much better
Only,
record than
yeah.
I did. Yeah, he only did 4. But I'm happy with the 1. I didn't get any Ursulas in the next set of set champs, but I'm fine with that. I did 2 top 8s, and I just barely missed out. But you know, I'll keep trying. I'll keep going. These are fun. I mean, I'd never done anything like this before, so actually getting to play in a competitive thing is definitely new, and it is very stressful, and it's a combination of a lot of emotions all at once.
It is. Yeah, it's a joyful and stressful, and yeah, I'm lucky in the sense that I'm lucky that I think badly about myself. That's not good. But I'm lucky that I never like think I'm gonna do good. So the thought of getting to day 2 just seems like such like a space shot for me. But I think it's cool that it's possible. Like, I mean, there's people that are in our circles that are like, "Oh yeah, I made day 2," and you're like, "Wow." It feels like you're talking to somebody that like qualified for the Olympics, and it's cool that we get to compete amongst the people, the Zach Bivens of the worlds and the R&Bs that are like killing it out there. I did have to stick my foot in my mouth, and I've told the story, and I feel bad because it has nothing against this person because they were very nice. But when we were doing the packing district event, I was like, "Oh yeah, I've been to a challenge. It was fun. Have you been to a challenge? Did you have?" And they're like, "Yeah, I've been to 2." It was Kevin. He's been in top 32 and top 16. So people are very humble. You don't know when you're talking to a really good player because they're usually just very nice people who happen to be very good
By
at the game.
Kevin, you mean Lorcana goons, Kevin?
Yes, because then people went goons. I was like, okay, well now once again, your avatar is of a goon, not you. So that I'm going to get flashcards. That's, I think, my big takeaway is before any event, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to get your screen name, avatar, logo, and real picture and just be like, I got to get, because I feel silly when I don't recognize somebody. But everybody's so nice. Like no one has ever been, that's the moral of the story is not that anybody has ever been like, you don't know who I am, but more that I'm like, very impressive. I will say that a common thread of these events, and you kind of hinted at it, was how engaged the team at Ravensburger is with the community. So my little aside, and you guys can attest to this, is that at D23, there was the small get together that Citizen Lorcana and Rebecca from Rebecca Quests put together, just being like, "Hey guys, show up at this hotel. There's kind of like a little area we can play. It's just going to be an unofficial meetup." And so I went, and I was absolutely floored because not only was there like, some of my favorite content creators and fans that I had seen throughout the day, but Steve, Shane, Ryan, Rochelle, and Cheyenne, and a few other people who were stopping by were there. And it's important to note that this day was a special day because this was Shimmering Sky release. This was D23 the first day. So they were up and being seen in downtown Disney very early and then worked all day and then were joyously interacting with fans and playing the game and passing out packs and teaching people pack rush. So like they were awake for a very long time working. Like they weren't like, I mean, we were working in the sense that we were trying to get product, but they were like actually working. This is their job. So that just blew my mind because I like my job, but not that much. So to know that they like their job, they love this game, they love the community, that just like it made the game more special to me, I think. So from the creators, the artists, the teams, have you guys had any interactions with anybody at Ravensburger that you're just like, whoa, this took the game, like you said, like at GammaCon where you had a chance? Do you guys have any other stories like that where you're like, this definitely takes this game from a game to a community for
So I
me?
want to speak to this one real quick because it's something that's very like, yeah, it's something that I've noticed and it's something that I really appreciate because it's part of their culture. Like we could talk about Gamma, where after a full day, Steve Warner took James, myself, and Liam to the hotel lobby at 1 a.m. and taught us how to play multiplayer. Uh, and we could
Yeah.
talk about Gen Con, where we arranged to get together, and same thing. Steve, Ryan, and Shell showed up. And they didn't just show up for like 10, 15 minutes. They were there for a good hour and a half talking with everybody who was there. You could talk about how they were handing out, promos or pins at the D23. You could talk about how they were on that freaking Disney cruise and Ryan was teaching people how to play. You could talk about how Ryan was at Disneyland handing out packs. You could talk about after
Yes.
D23, how Steve and Ryan stayed in Southern California for release day and went to a whole bunch of different events at the local game stores. Like the fact that they do this is incredible to me. And it talks to the culture of number one. Not only do they like do this for a living, but they're passionate about it and they care about the community. So I like give nothing but huge props to them for just engaging with the community that way.
Yeah, and in a way where they're joyful in doing it. Because I mean, gosh, everybody's done, something for work where you want to tell somebody, you're like, hey, I think it's cool. But like they're passionate, they're joyful, if you didn't know, you would think they're just very big fan of the game. Not, I mean, some might say they are the biggest fan of the game. But yeah, it was truly something cool to see. Adar, have you had any chances to interact with the folks at Ravensburger?
So probably my main chance was at Gen Con last year, and I will say I will gladly represent the people in the community who see somebody that they like look up to or know that they're like somebody important, and you just kind of freeze and don't really know what to do. So I always get really nervous, like when trying to talk with like Rochelle, Steve, and Ryan, and like all of those
Oh yeah.
groups of people. But, like, not because, like, they're putting off, like, that kind of energy that makes me nervous about it, like, they have all been just so incredibly kind every time I have gotten a chance to talk with them. I have a hat that I have made with a Lorcana symbol on it that I had brought to not D23, Gen Con, and, I got Shane, Ryan, and Steve to all sign that, and they were, like, all so kind and gracious when I was like, "Hey, like, I know this is weird, like, could you sign my hat for me?" And they're such an amazing group of people, and yeah, I definitely second it's their culture, it's who they are, like, they're not putting up a front, "Oh, we have to be nice to these people." Like, they very
Mhm.
legitimately care and are excited about the community, and it's just a really cool thing to see.
It is, yeah. I will say that, like, I don't know if it gets them in trouble because I'm sure that they were I'm sure on the walkie-talkies, the D23 staff, but they would, like, be like, "I'm gonna sign this for somebody," and, like, the D23 staff would be like, "Stop it, sir." And you can just tell they're like, "No, I wanna interact with my fans." They're like, "You can't, because anytime they'd stop anywhere, a small line would slowly start to form behind them, just as the nature of them being exciting to be around, and I was part of that line. So I can't judge anyone in a line because I was excited too. And so lastly, James, have you had any special moments that stood out to you interacting with the staff of Ravensburger?
Absolutely. Actually, it's funny because I told the story long ago on our podcast about how the second day of D23 when I got into the line, um, I ended up at the back, of course, back of the line somewhere far away from the booth, and the guy who was like making sure everyone got in, like this is the Lorcana line, and he's standing at the back of the line making sure everyone gets in, and the person next to me asks him a question, and he answers it, and I can't remember what the question was because that was the unimportant part. But I asked him like, "Oh, by the way," because he was wearing a lanyard and it had the purple pin, the media pin from
Mm.
D23, and I'm like, "Where did you get that pin?" And he's like, "Oh," and he reaches into his pocket and he hands me one, and then he hands one to the guy who had asked the first question, and I'm like, "Well, that's really awesome. I guess that's how you get one." But apparently, I find out later that that was Philippe Frankie, the CEO, current CEO of Ravensburger North America, who was basically doing line management at the end of the line. Um, and of course, he's been nice. We talked to McGam a little bit. He was very nice there. Held like a 20-minute conversation with him. It was awesome. But fast forward to this year's D23, and on the very first morning, walking around that big cavern over at the side of Hall D, who do I see walking around looking at the lines? But it's Philip Frankie again, and he is again on line duty. He's managing lines for the Ravensburger booth, and so it's just the fact that, and now he's been upgraded to head of global games, and so even this guy who does not absolutely whatsoever need to be at the convention in that form is out there doing that. And at one point, going through the line, Stefan Madi, the current CEO, was handing people Tiana sleeves to put their promos in when they went and got them further down the line, making sure people had little protectors for them because
Yeah.
no one brought things like that. And the fact that Ryan and Steve, if you went by the booth, you were like, I'd say there was about a 99% chance that Ryan and Steve were at the back of the booth talking to people, whoever came up to talk to them for the entire convention. It was crazy how much
Yeah.
that all of them were there and made themselves available and were working the booth and doing everything necessary to make sure that the people who did show up got what they wanted and felt like they were appreciated for being fans of Lorcana.
Stefan was one of my cashiers when I checked out one time from the booth. Like he was working the actual cash register, which again, like you said, he has no need to
Yeah.
be there. He's the CEO of Ravensburger North America, and there he is working working the cash register at D23.
That was the coolest part of their booth was it was like, any person I talked to, I learned after the first day, like, they're probably somebody that you're gonna later get home and be like, "Oh my gosh," like, they're like, the artists were manning the booth, and they're like I'm like, "You make my favorite cards, and you're just here." And it's just so cool that it's all hands on deck, and I think that's a very cool part because, when they say, like, "We wanna make things work," you're like, "Oh, no, I've seen them, they do wanna make things work," to the point where,
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, the CEO, the artist, they're all there working, and I think that's a very impressive thing to see, especially it just feels personal, and that always feels better. Um, and I will say that it also is very cool that they interact on social media. Like Rochelle will interact with people, and I'm like, man, if somebody messaged me on my day off and was like, "Hey, can you tell me about this product at your company?" I'd be like, "No." So like the fact that yeah, like but they enjoy it and they live and breathe it. It's just been a really cool thing to be a part of. I will say that one of the biggest things we mentioned, like, oh, there's collectors, there's competitive, there's not casual questers. I don't think they're called questers. Either
Social
way, there
gamers.
it's called yeah. Yeah. So people who enjoy the game in a more relaxed manner, one might say. So for me, it's so hard for me to pick what my favorite way to enjoy the game is. I always say like the only wrong way is if you're telling people that there is a wrong way. Those are the or people who don't play with sleeves. Those are the only two wrong ways, is gatekeepers and people don't use sleeves. Because 'cause I'm like, "How are they shuffling? What are they doing?" Um, for you, if you had to pick your favorite way to engage with the game, whether it be going to events, going to local league, online, what has been your favorite way to engage with Lorcana? And I'll rapid fire. I'll start with you, James.
My favorite way is talking with other people about Lorcana, whether it be talking about building decks or finishing a collection or anything really about talking, which is why I guess why I am involved in a podcast is I just really enjoy talking about Lorcana.
Yeah, you found a good way because yeah, people, you're like, it's I can broadcast my thoughts. So that is the ultimate end game for people who like to talk. Adar, what has been your favorite way to interact with a game? I know you said you were starting out as a collector, but you're so much more than that now.
For sure. I think besides the collecting side of it, I think my favorite way to engage with the game right now is definitely as an unofficial welcome committee for all of the local league that I attend. I'm super fortunate to be in an area that has quite a few game stores that support Lorcana, and you can pretty much go to a league every evening during the week if you really wanted to. So, my husband and I do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We have a league on each one of those days. And for those 3 leagues, I'm kind of like the welcome committee. If I ever see anybody new there, I'm the person, "Hey, are you here to play Lorcana? Tell me about yourself." And I like engaging with Lorcana in that way of playing with new people, playing with those younger kids that we have showing up to some of those. The community aspect is really big for me.
And now we know how you got the pins on your lanyard is you're working overtime at the local league.
It helps to have somebody else.
Yeah, right. That's true. That's my poor husband. He was like, I'm gonna go to the challenge, and he's like, I'll just play for a little bit. But then he was doing better than me. I was like, unfortunately, now you can't drop out because your points are too good, so you have to keep playing. So that's the real secret is hooking in a partner so that you get double the chances. And lastly, you, James. Or sorry, Jared. Lastly, you.
Our
What's
names are
been your
too
favorite way to
similar.
interact? I know. I
It's
try.
I mean, it's context dependent. Like I love playing in real life, right? Like nothing is gonna compare to that. I love going to conventions. But for me, I think uh online, back when I had more time, I just loved connecting with people. You can ask James. I always used to say my secret weapon was living in people's DMs. Like I just loved connecting with people, and especially in the early days, fellow content creators. I used to like reach out and made sure that I introduced myself, made sure that they knew if they needed anything, they could ask me. And just the amount of friendships that I've developed that way, both with fellow content creators and just, people.
Now, this is gonna make me sound cynical because you guys are like the community. But I will say a secret thing that's been very exciting for me is learning that I can be competitive. I will say I am a dyed in the wool Disney adult. I mean, you can see. But also there is an Ursula and a Stitch because I learned that I can learn how to play. And I think it's kind of fun because for a while, I kind of pigeonholed myself to be like, well, I mean, I'm not a TCG player, but I know Disney and I like the parks. And I felt like the need to qualify myself as like, I like Lorcana, but don't worry, I know I'm not a Lorcana person. So it's very cool to know that like anybody can put in the time and effort and be in the right. There's a lot of things that go into winning, whether it's, your local community, but I mean, there is effort in it. Um, so knowing that, like, wait a minute, I can like this and I can be good at it. And I know you guys have all had your own successes with that too, where you're like, wait a minute, I'm actually kind of good at this game, which I think has been
I'm yet to
fun.
reach that point, but maybe
No,
someday.
don't.
Didn't you just go 3-0 in a
Okay.
draft,
The amount of
Jared?
times I've gone 3-0, probably like 3 times in the last year, okay? And draft, okay, yes. This is the first time I've actually
That's
done well in draft. And I will say, like, there was no better high than going undefeated. Like, wow, this is what winning feels like. That feels
it.
good.
Yeah.
I want to do more of this. But I did say, but I say this every set, but I don't know, set 5 feels different. Like, I do want to try harder to be competitive this set. Like, I want to get that Mirabelle um promo, set championship promo. And when the Vegas DLC
Yeah.
comes around, I don't want to just scrub out. Like, I want to compete. I want to win more games than I lose. Like, that's my goal. So
Yeah, and I mean, the good news is that I think all of us on this call can say it's very doable in the sense that, I think it's fun because there's the meta. Now I'm going to talk about meta analysis. There's lots of cards. No, so I think it's something where it obviously takes time, and I always tell people, I'm like, well, what do you enjoy? Because if you don't enjoy that part where you're studying cards and watching playthroughs, then don't do it. Because obviously, competitive Lorcana is just one tiny piece of the Lorcana pie. So it's one of those things where if you enjoy it, definitely go into it. But also, if you find yourself ever being like, well, this isn't fun, don't do it. So that's like my other favorite thing too, is that the minute that you find competitive is like, I'm not having fun, you can still have fun a dozen different ways. I love limited, and that you brought that up is because that is such a fun way to enjoy the cards that you never get to enjoy some of these cards. And if you only play the meta, you would never touch a very large percentage of the cards in Lorcana. So I think it's very cool that, being a competitive player can mean a varying different things, and success looks very different depending on how you define it for
I gotta
yourself.
take a quick
So I will say that the most exciting thing has been watching news in real time for me. At D23, I got to get news from the source. I felt it come. I could see it leave the mouth of the news bearer, and I absorbed it. So that was very exciting. Um, were there any announcements that came up that you guys are excited about? With the caveat question, are there anything you're like, come on, I'm ready? Where there's just a thing where you're like, for me, I'll kind of like start that I'm very excited to see that they're gonna do worlds at Disney World and nationals, not nationals, continentals um at Disneyland. But I'm also excited to see more varying types of products. One thing that I love is I love opening packs. So I'm kind of hoping as time evolves, opening a pack looks different. Like maybe there are alternate arts, maybe there's like reprints of old cards with new art. So that's what I'm personally like waiting to see is like, will there be new ways to enjoy old cards, whether that be alternate art, collector packs, other things like, other card games kind of have ways of making some might say, of making you buy the same thing again, but I'm ready to. I would love to buy prettier versions of something. So, what announcements were you excited about, and what are you hoping to hear be announced?
The thing I was most excited about, besides what you already pointed out, Katie, was definitely Pixar coming. I have seen so
Mm.
many talks about like, oh, Pixar's gonna be forever in the future. Oh, Pixar's gonna be super close. And I'm glad that we finally have a year and it's nice and clean cut and it's a nice clean answer for me to tell somebody when somebody
Yes.
says, when is Pixar coming? It's like, well, we know. So that was probably the most exciting thing for me from D23. Um, I think the thing I'm still waiting to see is one of the ways that I tend to engage with the game locally is I really enjoy judging Lorcana. And so I'm really looking for some more support for judging Lorcana, whether that's in the form of like additional stuff in their set championship kit because they want a specific judge for that. But even like something as simple as just like a way to show that somebody is competent in judging Lorcana. I think that's something that we're really lacking in the community right now. And I would love to see something. I'm sure there's something in the works, like there has to be with how big the game has gotten. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what Lorcana and Ravensburger has in store for judging and building a kind of judging program.
Yeah, and making it worth, I don't want to say worth the judge's time, but understanding the importance of a good judge in the community, whether that be like a judge copy of the promo where it
Mhm.
says like this is judge, but it's because I was there. And you don't get to compete, but it's a different kind of fun, and you want to reward people for giving their day to just be a rule fault to enforce rules. That's a very valuable thing that somebody does for the community. So yes, I will second that's be something very exciting to hear more about as it grows. Um, James, what about you? What are some things you're hoping to see?
Oh, geez. I kind of go along with you, Katie, in wanting some additional levels of alternate art. I don't know if I would want like a massive amount of reissues, but I think a new level of card in the packs we already get would be pretty cool. As long as they weren't as hard to get as Enchanteds, I would like a moderately medium between the cold foils and the enchanteds where it's accessible and completable, because that really hurts my collector brain of not being able to complete those enchanteds because there's a thing called a budget, and you can't
Yeah.
get all of those things. And so I would like something in between that maybe would be more accessible, budget wise, but also really cool. And I think alternate arts like the enchanteds, but maybe not as super shiny, maybe shiny but not alternate arts. Just like kind of mix it up. I know that a lot of people point to Pokemon and how many different levels of cards that they do, and I think that's the kind of thing that I think would
Mhm.
work with Lorcana as well.
Well, and I mean, showing this set, like just the slight enhancement where, I mean, somebody who doesn't care about that kind of thing might not even notice, but like just the legendaries being just a little bit cooler looking. I mean, we like shiny things. I think as we can see by collecting pins and enchanteds, shiny objects go very far in this community. So all you have to do is add like a little bit of special paint, and I'm like, well, I'm in. So it's not very hard to impress us, but when it's done, it's always appreciated. And lastly, for you, Jared, the question that is on everyone's mind is, what are you hoping to see announced? We saw some good announcements, but what are you hoping that's still in the can that they just
I don't
haven't told
know.
us
That's
about?
that's so hard. I mean, I will second what Adara said with the judging and what James said about the different levels of collecting. I mean, the more accessible you can make the game, like if I don't have to spend $40 to get Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood Forest, I would be a very happy camper. I don't like I'm not somebody that needs the highest rarity card in my deck. I would be happy just having the card at an affordable price. So I'm all on board for that. As far as changes, I mean, honestly, if you'd asked me before D23, I would have had a whole laundry list for you. But they really answered just about everything that I was like having questions about. I mean, I know that's kind of a
Yeah, they
cop
Yeah.
out
really
of
did.
an
Yeah.
answer, but it really did.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, mine is like, I want more stuff to buy. So my complaint is not really, it's more just, I love consuming things. So I just love opening packs. So give me more reasons to open packs because how many boxes do you need of each set? The answer is somewhere around 10. I don't know. But they have done a very good job letting people kind of know what's on the horizon. I think it's fun that they always leave us wanting a little bit more when they talk about the quest. I'm like, oh, tell me more.
Yes.
Like, I can't wait to hear like what these fan events are going to be about. I can't wait to hear what, I mean, gosh, even like watching the coverage for Atlanta versus when I went to Fort Worth. Just, I mean, even watching it grow just amongst 3 months has been fascinating, seeing like the side events grow and the vendor room grow and like all these things where people are meeting up beforehand. There's cosplay. So very exciting.
Yes. Been something I've talked about our last two podcasts. What are the Disney Lorcana Quest events? Like they gave us a teaser, they told us about these promo cards, but they didn't really give us a whole lot more than that. And that's something that I'm really excited to learn more about.
Oh, me
Yep.
too. The signing things, because like the fact that they saw that people like getting characters to sign cards, and they're like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna bring you characters, and we're gonna have special cards, and they're playable. I'm like, so
They're paying attention. They know
Yeah.
what's up, right?
No.
It's a huge part of why I want to go to continentals and worlds if possible to experience even just like what is this quest thing.
I know, right? Let me go. I want to go to the quest.
The other thing that the special announcements they gave us, like, oh yeah, they gave us so much information, and then I noticed the last 2 weeks at League, the only thing people are talking about now that Pixar is like, oh, we know Pixar is coming. Now it's like, okay, we know Pixar is coming. Now let's argue about what should be in the first Pixar set. So now, like, we're going to have 2 years of
Oh,
asking
yeah.
what is going to be in the first Pixar set. So it's like they just gave us more stuff to talk about instead of like answering. It's like they answered one question and now we've got a billion more.
But they're fun questions. Those are my favorite kind of questions is, will I get to do an action called Ka-chow? Yes or no? Please tell me. So now the good news is we're getting close to the hour mark and I'm at the last question. So I'm doing the Citizen Lorcana hour
Shucks.
mark honor. But and so the last question, I gave you guys a little prep and it's hard. But if you had to use one word to describe Disney Lorcana the first year, what would you use and why? And we'll start with you, Jared. What would be your one word?
I'm gonna cheat a little bit here and hyphenate a word.
Yeah.
You came onto our podcast. It's been about a month ago now, and you said something that has stuck with me ever since then. And so my one word is Disney experience. Because I think that's so perfect. Like every time I interact with the game Disney Lorcana, whether it's at my local league, whether it's at D23, whether it's at Gen Con, whether it's on Twitter, it feels like I'm connecting with people and I'm having that Disney experience. And like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but you're able to connect with people over Lorcana in a way that's different than, like anything else. I mean, maybe not anything else, but it is this really easy way to connect with people. I mean, just today, I taught one of my coworkers how to play Lorcana with a couple of starter packs that I had, and we were able to share that Disney experience. And the fact that I get to bring people into that world with me through such an easy way, I think it's one of the coolest things about this game.
Yeah, I will attest the Disney magic is palpable because, yeah, it's just, you get, sometimes people say Disney adults in a way where I'm like, that's not very nice. But I think Disney adults bring the magic to the game because they are very friendly and exciting. And I think that magic kind of makes this game feel a little bit different than other games I've played in the past. Adara, what about you? What would be your one word?
So
Or you can hyphenate it.
I do not have a hyphenation.
Okay.
However, I feel like I can't use community because I've used that so much tonight. So instead, my chosen word is friendship because I feel like that was the unexpected thing that Lorcana has led to for me, both friendships online with people across the world, but also people locally. I had not really gotten out back into my community since the depths of COVID. And so this really gave me that chance and that icebreaker to actually get out and talk with people. And like I've met so many people and made so many friends, even just at our locals, that like just bring a smile to my face and bring joy to me. And so I really feel like friendship is the thing that just highlights my Disney Lorcana experience over this past year.
I love it. And you have to go last, which is not, well, technically I'm going last. So I have the hardest role. So you have the second hardest job of what is your one word?
So I was going to do a Jared-ish thing and like just scrunch as many words as I can into like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And I was thinking something like exhaustive maze funspiration. But instead, I'm just going to shorten that all down. And my word is more. Just MORE. Because I have now more things to have fun with, more people that are friends, more things to collect, more things to learn, more things to do that are new and interesting to me, like learning how to play a TCG for the first time ever and being involved in, it's just more. There's just more stuff. So that's it, more.
Yeah, your bank, but your local bank probably is like the same. They're like, there's just more of these
No,
charges from
that's
Lorcana.
Yeah. No,
but it's
well,
all good.
yes. I say the bank would be like less technically, right? Because
Yeah, that's true. It depends
there's
on what
less in the
perspective.
bank account because of Lorcana.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds maybe perhaps overly sentimental, but if I can't do it on my own show, then where can I? But I would think my one word would be hyphenated. It would be lifesaver in the sense that, yeah, you mentioned COVID. I wasn't a military spouse. My husband got out of the military, but we moved and I work remote. And so it got to the point where I'm in my 30s and I don't have any local friends. And so having a thing where I had a reason to leave the house and I leave the house to go talk to people and I'm happy about it. And making community. I'm in a couple different leagues in the internet and having more things to be fascinated with and more things to, care about. It's all been very good. My life has been better because of Lorcana. And I know that makes it that's a lot to say about a game that's like my life is better, but it has. I mean, it has improved in every way. Um so yeah, I'm very thankful for it. And the fact that I'm talking to you guys who are in all your different corners of the country and we're all talking about this, that just shows that, yeah, it's been such a good addition to my life and a lot of other people's lives.
That's great.
So, yeah, happy note. Cause yeah, it's always good to have something new, especially because, sometimes the internet can feel small and it's so funny that I never was on Twitter until this year. And I'm like, this is the happiest place on the internet is Twitter, which is not what you
So
would think.
true.
But the Lorcana corner is so happy. It's my favorite place.
Wow.
But I'm like, normally people don't say that about that website. But I'm like, no, everyone's so nice and they'll send you messages about things and it's
I will
great.
say I've had on Twitter when I see people refer to it as a hexscape and how terrible of a place it is. Like maybe I'm just in my Lorcana bubble and I don't branch out of it.
Yeah.
Like I try not to. But for me, like Twitter has been like a complete game changer for me. And then like you, I'd never used Twitter before Lorcana.
Yeah.
So like that's all I
Yeah.
know about
It's
Twitter. So I didn't get to see all the other stuff and I try to avoid the other stuff, you know. Um
Which is must be there because like, somebody said something negative the other day, and everyone's like, "But
yeah.
no, it's just not gonna happen." In the Lorcana community, and people are like, "It's not," and, I'm
Yeah.
here for it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jared, James, Adara. I can't thank you enough for spending your evening with me talking about this game. Like I mentioned in the beginning, you guys have been inspiration for me to go from being a longtime lurker to a content creator, so I'm thankful that you paved the way for creators like me. But more than that, I'm so happy that you guys provide support because, sometimes when you try to break into a community, whatever it is, people can be suspicious or why are you, wary. And you guys were like, come on in here, be on my show, I'll be on your show. And it's so wonderful. And I have to think that part of the reason that the community is as good as it is because of people like you that were pioneers in the community and set the precedent for us to grow on. So thankful for you guys for doing that. Um, and for spending your evening with me on the short term, spending your evening with me, long term, building this community to what it is. So before we say goodbye tonight, where can people find and follow and interact with you? I'll start with you, Adara, because James and Jared might have a similar answer. But what about for you, Adara?
Yeah, so I also had never used Twitter before Lorcana. But so you can find me on Twitter at Ochem102. The screen name is Adara of Lorcana, but that's the actual handle, I think it's called. And then I am all over the Discords related to Lorcana as Adara of Lorcana.
Perfect. And if you see the clerk, that's also her. That's her pseudonym. You know you're cool when you got a pseudonym. So, all right. James, where can people find and follow you?
You can find me everywhere online at Dan Regal, and I am on a podcast called The Citizens of Lorcana, which I think Jared will tell more about in just a second. And as mentioned way back at the beginning, I am also on the San Diego Comic-Con unofficial blogs podcast called the SD Concast, but we are currently off season because Comic-Con was last month, and I won't be doing anything again probably until next year at this point for that. So don't go looking for it right now unless you want to listen to old stories of Comic-Cons past.
And lastly, he hinted that you might have a show called Citizens of Lorcana. So where can people find and follow you on your
Well,
journey?
you can find us on the podcasting platform of your choice. at the Citizens of Lorcana podcast. You can find me at the website formerly known as Twitter at Citizens of Lorcana. But I just want to say, Katie, you had mentioned that, we laid the foundation, and, maybe we did. Like, we've been around for a long time, but it's been nothing but joy to have people like you and like Live Laugh Lorcana and, 40 Born and Earlmeister and Lorcana Villain, and like seeing all these people sprout up from that, whatever foundation we may have helped lay. I love listening to your podcast. You have such a cool voice, such a cool personality. And I love like your interactions with your guests. Like, I'm always laughing when I listen to your show. So I really appreciate you inviting us on. I appreciate all that you're doing for the community, and just super glad that you invited us here tonight.
I love that. That's my favorite part of the show is the intro and the outro, because everyone's like, "You're the best, and you're the best," and everyone, it's like my favorite part. And I was like, I should just let's skip the middle. Let's just all tell each other how cool we are, because that's my favorite part. So I appreciate it very, very much. And thank you to the listeners for joining us for another episode of the Lore Keepers Inn. If there's anything you want to hear me talk about, feel free to email me, contact@thelorekeepersin.com, or reach me on Twitter or Instagram in the socials link below. As always, thank you for hanging out with me today. I'm always happy to have you stop by the inn no matter where your journey may take you. And if you don't know where to find us, just take the second star to the right exit and head straight on to